everyone. I'm Lila Mower, President of Kokua Council. Welcome to the candidates debate for Honolulu Council District 6. Our guests today are Traci Toguchi and Tyler Dos Santos-Tam. Welcome to our candidates. The way this debate is organized is that our Kokua Council's directors will be asking questions, and our candidates will each have 2 minutes to answer that question or address that issue. And then they will be given an additional minute to either enhance their response or rebut their opponent's response. Okay, so let me get started. Well, I should tell you a little bit about Kokua Council. Kokua Council's mission is that we advocate, inform, and educate to improve laws, policies, and practices impacting the well-being of seniors, their family, and our community. We're a nonprofit organization made out of volunteer advocates, activists, and whistleblowers committed to good governance. All right, so Traci, let's start with introductions. Please go ahead.
Good morning. Thank you so much to the Kokua Council for hosting this debate forum. Seniors, kupuna, have been a part of my life since I was very young. My mother used to take me singing at the Kuakini Medical Center. So I actually grew up singing Japanese songs, and so I would do that there. I was a volunteer for seniors from the time I was about in high school. When I graduated high school, that was at the Marlani Nursing Center. I helped with the resident feedings, activities, visitations with the residents, the Waikiki Friendly Neighbors program. I would visit with a woman who had Alzheimer's disease. I also taught karaoke, singing to seniors at the Kapahulu Senior Center. That was through the State of Hawaii Department of Education program. My family and I were caregivers for my grandfather, and toward his latter years, he had Alzheimer's disease. When I was Miss Hawaii in 1995, my platform was actually focused on seniors. It was called Aging with Dignity. And in 1996, I published Aging with Dignity, Social Options for Seniors. And that was in partnership with the City and County of Honolulu, Matsuoka Charitable Foundation, HMSA, American Savings Bank, HICO. I became a caregiver for my grandmother. In 2008, we tried to bring the handbook to an updated version. What happened was there was this rising fuel costs for the printing. So eventually St. Francis Medical Center helped to do a certain version. I've been recently helping to address the city's vacancies issues by looking at seeking to bring retirees back or to retain them for as long as possible, and looking at the city's age-friendly program, and that's Ordinance 1836. Firsthand knowledge right now as a caregiver for my parents. They're both kind of independent, but they rely on me daily to assist with their groceries, transportation, and medical appointment and other needs. So I understand the concerns firsthand of seniors, and as a caregiver. I'm running for this council district seat after much encouragement by constituents of this district, because I know and have been working firsthand actively to resolve especially complex and long-standing issues in this community. So they were concerned that the current council member, Carol Fukunaga, has been in this seat for more than actually the 2 terms. They were concerned as to who would know the history and how to continue to address these issues. Because even after the issues are addressed, many times something comes up again, or another part of the issue continues. So that was the concern. My background as a paralegal, I believe, really helps me to be able to do this job effectively. I also have a background in the private nonprofit government sectors, actually with the city since January 2018, mostly with the city council as well as with the rail project, state of Hawaii legislature and some state agencies. That was since 2001, as well as I was a subcontractor for the Social Security Administration. It was the Office of Disability Adjudication and Review. So I believe that I have the strength to be able to work with the constituents, the stakeholders in the community, subject matter experts, our city, state, and federal agencies, and to be able to effectively and efficiently resolve issues of this district. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Traci. All right, Tyler, your turn, please.
Aloha, everyone. I'm Tyler Dos Santos-Tam, and I'm running for the City Council District 6 seat. This is a place where I was born and raised. I grew up in Alewa Heights on the same street as Natsunoya Tea House. and I served on the Liliha neighborhood board for 6 years. As a neighborhood board member, we really got a chance to see when the city's working well, when the potholes are filled, when the streetlights work, when your sewer works really well, everybody's happy. When the city doesn't follow through, when it drops the ball, when there are longstanding issues, as Traci mentioned, that aren't resolved and haven't been resolved for a very long time, this is when neighborhoods suffer, and in particular, our seniors. When I was a member of the neighborhood board, I was the chair of the neighborhood board's Complete Streets and Pedestrian Safety Committee. This is something really near and dear to my heart. As somebody that doesn't always rely on his car to get around, somebody who uses bike share and the bus as well. This is something really important to me. It was catalyzed in 2015 when one of our neighbors, Leslie Chan, who lives in Upper Liliha, was hit by a car walking her dogs. She was nearly paralyzed. She is okay now. She has a walker and comes out to volunteer with me. But she was hit in a legal crosswalk right in front of her home that had been faded. The streetlights weren't working very well, and people were speeding up and down Liliha Street constantly, and neighbors had been complaining for years that this area was dangerous. And it took a tragic incident like that to finally get the city to fix that intersection. It took 3 years to get even something as simple as a flashing light. That to me is unacceptable. We need leaders who are going to take action, and that's exactly what I'm going to do as a council member. Whether it's on homelessness, whether it's on crime, which is probably the top issue that I hear about from neighbors, or affordable housing and the cost of living. These are all issues that I hear from constituents about, and in particular our seniors, and we're going to take action starting on day one on all of these things. So I look forward through this conversation to share my ideas about how we're going to take action, how we're going to fix these issues, not just talk about them, not just have meetings, but really move our city forward in a way with vision, with compassion, and with really a notion that we need to get things done as a city on behalf of our constituents.
Thank you very much, Tyler. All right. So now we're going to go to our debate questions or issues. And we're going to start with Tyler. And the first person to speak, is Director Barbara Service. Barbara, are you ready?
Yes, I am. Excuse me. Aloha, Tyler and Traci. My question is about the rail. Ever since the rail's been, well, maybe not ever since, but for a long time, it's been speculated that the rail is going to be underutilized, very greatly underutilized, especially given the cost, but even not considering the cost. Most people say, well, many people say they won't ride it. I wondered what you might think of doing or what you plan to do to encourage ridership, incentivize ridership, etc.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Tyler.
Absolutely. So there's a few things that I think we need to do immediately. First and foremost, we need to make sure that the bus and the rail are integrated in a way that's meaningful and makes sense. One of the principal reasons for the rail project was to take a lot of that traffic from that central corridor, along Oahu South Shore, and those express buses that run from Pearl City, that run from Kapolei into town, we would be able to replace that route with the rail and improve bus service elsewhere. I know HART has been working on this, DTS has been working on this plan along with HART, but the question is, where is it and where are we communicating to the public that these changes are going to happen? And we need to make sure that those changes are in the best interest of the constituents and of the folks that utilize our buses. The other issue that we have, and the city council is going to have to deal with this in the next few years, is the park and ride situation. A lot of folks are expected to be coming down from Mililani, from the leeward coast, and parking their car somewhere convenient, getting on the rail and heading into town. Unfortunately, because of the cost, as you mentioned, they've sort of put the park and ride near Sam's Club in Pearl City on pause. And some of the other programs to get people in have also fallen to the wayside. So we need to work on that. The final thing, and this is very important for our constituents who live in town, is the mayor's current plan is to shorten the end of the route to Kakaako. And of course, that's also going to change ridership because a lot of people are planning to take it all the way to Ala Moana and then transfer onto buses to wherever they needed to go, including Waikiki. And so all of these factors together really require leadership from the council, somebody who understands the project very well. My background's actually in the construction industry too. So, your question about cost and other issues, including our change orders and the contracting and the way we procure the various contracts within the project, that's something we're going to look into. And believe me, we're going to be pushing very hard on this.
Thank you, Tyler. All right. Traci, your turn, please.
Traci?
Yes, thank you. So I mentioned that I did work for the Rail Project. I was an information specialist too in the public involvement program department. And so part of that was helping to educate the public and answer a lot of their questions and concerns. I also administered the public information requests. So a lot of this is backed up by data, right, which changes, especially given the pandemic and the changing of the traffic conditions. So from the legislative standpoint, what we can do is help to give free rides, right, so people can try it, to increase ridership. Looking at other models. So while I was in the public involvement department, I was actually part of the team looking at the interim opening and how we can really encourage ridership, how we can really help to educate the public on how this is actually, it's a change of your culture, change of the way that you do things normally, many times by car, but can you look at other ways and possibly be open to doing that? So there's actually a micro transit ways of communicating, of commuting. And so I did talk with the City Department of Transportation Services about that. So that's kind of helping people to go more door to door, especially for those seniors and those who are disabled, to be able to kind of just be able to take the rail. Okay, how can they go closer to their actual house or directly to their door? So looking at ways to do that. Also with airport, like for example, I ask people when I talk with people, they say, oh yeah, I weekly commute to Kauai. So I said, okay, you can actually take the rail. And so I say, please just be open to doing things like that. So I think there are definitely ways to do that. I used to live in New York City, and actually the first year I was terrified to catch the train, and I just caught the bus everywhere and I walked, and then finally I decided to do it and I loved it, and I caught the train and the bus and walked. So I'm hopeful with this, and I believe that the ridership can be increased.
Thank you, Traci. Thank you, Traci. Sorry about that. All right, Tyler, would you like to add to that?
I think the only thing that I would add is, as we start the planning in and around the TOD areas, there's really I think one of the most important things the city can do long-term to make sure the project is successful is to make sure that the dream of TOD actually happens. And it's focused on local people who are going to be, riding the train, from say Iwilei into downtown. We have a lot of potential there from Kalihi, where we're going to have a lot of redevelopment, or even the stadium into town. And we have the opportunity there, and hopefully we're going to have a lot of senior housing as well. That's something I really want to look at is our TOD plans to make sure that we have riders built in to the project right there.
Thank you. All right, Traci, would you like to add something?
Oh, no, that's okay.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, the next question comes from Director Dale Head.
Good morning and welcome. Appreciate your presence with us today. So anyway, I'm talking to you from Honolulu Valley, which is District 6. I'm your neighbor. Thank you for running for office. Okay, our district has the highest concentration of multifamily dwellings in the city and county of Honolulu. Those homeowner associations. There are multiple problems with these state licensed but unregulated property management companies. Would you be willing to introduce a city ordinance to regulate these property management companies to protect consumers? Thank you.
All right, Traci, you'll take this question first.
Yes. So yes, you're correct that Moanalua Valley is currently in District 6, but with the reapportionment, we will not have that anymore, unfortunately. So just wanted to let you know. With respect to your question, so yes, you did acknowledge the state jurisdiction, and with respect to the city jurisdiction, I would need to look at that more closely, but generally I do support helping our residents and including the condominium owners to be able, especially seniors who are on fixed income, be able to thrive and survive, more than survive, but thrive as well. Working with the City Council, Councilmember Fukunaga is the chair of the Public Infrastructure and Technology Committee. And so the fire sprinkler issue is very big right now. And part of that is that seniors have voiced their concerns about being able to afford the improvements needed to do that. So I support, helping seniors and our residents being able to afford to live in their condos.
Thank you very much, Traci. Tyler?
Yeah, this is a really great question. In fact, I'm the president of my condo association. It's the largest condo association in the state, the 801 South Association of Unit Owners. And, we deal, even though we're a newer project, we deal pretty heavily with our property management company and even the agencies, that regulate those, the condominium, folks under DCCA. I think going to your question specifically, what I don't want to do is have an additional layer of complicated regulation where, these condominium associations have to deal with DCCA and also have to deal with, it probably would fall under DPP. And DPP, as you've probably seen in the news, is a little bit of a mess these days. And this is something that the next council is going to have to work on. In fact, this is going to be a pet project of mine, coming from the construction industry, coming from the condo association here, dealing with affordable housing issues. This is an area that we really have to focus on. And so I'm reticent to say, the city should step forward and regulate it, because we already have a very difficult time regulating many things under that department, whether it's a building code and occupancy code, whether it's reviewing plans and permits. So I think the best role that we as city council members can play is supporting, our state legislators in their efforts to make sure DCCA, which is equipped to deal with this, is able to, make sure there are some regulations. I know they've put some new ones in place and also responded to some federal rules about reserves. There's also the new reserve study requirement, which is trying to make sure that condos have the resources over the long term to pay for maintenance and improvements. So the best role that we can play is to support our state partners in that. And I'm happy to do that, because we have so many associations and so many multifamily residences within our district.
Thank you very much, Tyler. Traci, would you like to add anything?
Just to reiterate that I do, because this tends to be more of the state jurisdiction, that yes, I do support helping the state and encourage them to look at this more closely.
All right, thank you very much. And Tyler, would you like to add anything else?
All good, thanks.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much. The next question comes from my colleague, Director Doug Matsuoka.
Okay, yeah. Hey, thanks to both of you for showing up. This is really good. We really appreciate it. I'm up on Alewa Drive, a couple of corners up from Natsunoya, so right in the heart of District 6. You're going to have to reapportion like crazy to get me out of the district. I'm a renter now, but I also was homeless in District 6. So this is where my question comes from. With 33% of Hawaii's residents identified with the acronym ALICE, asset limited, income constrained, employed, there's a growing number of homeless who end up on the streets, not because they have mental problems or abusing substances, but for financial reasons. They can't make the rent. And this is shown by a recent study by the National Low-Income Housing Coalition. And this can come from big increases in rent against fixed incomes, like a lot of seniors, or when a breadwinner is injured or incapacitated, a carpenter gets a heart attack and it's hard for him if he's not unionized, especially. What ideas do you have that might help homeless people who are not mentally ill or abusing substances get back under roof? And
Thank you very much, Doug. So Tyler will take this question first.
Yeah, so let's talk about homelessness sort of big picture wise. And as you sort of point out, there's this wide spectrum of folks who fall within homelessness. There's really challenging, mental health issues and other things, but there's also some folks, as you mentioned, who are working hard and fall on tough times or are income limited, being seniors on fixed income. Those folks, I think, are in many ways the easiest to help. And we've gotten a little bit of a roadmap through the CARES Act funding. A lot of that went to rent relief and rent support, and we really saw the huge need in the community for this. The city does have a emergency housing voucher program, which of course we need to support and find some ways to expand to the extent that there's federal funding available under the new Inflation Reduction Act and some other things the federal government's going to do. We need to be grabbing for every available federal dollar and getting it out as quickly as possible. And I know this was one of the frustrations with the CARES Act money that went to the city, as it sort of just sat there, and finally we figured out how to get it out. So that's one. I mean, I think our emergency housing vouchers for somebody who falls in hard times, sleeping in their car, we got to get them out of that situation and into something stable to prevent issues further down the line. In terms of housing, one of my big focuses is going to be on affordable rentals. I've been a housing advocate for years and pushed the state legislature to expand the GET credits for affordable rental construction, and worked with many of the trade groups to come up with some, you might call them concessions and other things to help incentivize it as well. On the city side, one of the first things that I'd like to work on is increasing the allowable density in our apartment zones so that we can hopefully get more apartment units, and we don't need to come up with all these complicated sort of schemes to create housing. One of the issues and one of the reasons why we don't have as many affordable rentals is the zoning in our A1 and A2 apartment zones. The sort of low to medium density apartment zones is very, very low. And so if you were to go down the hill to School Street, a lot of that's on A1 and A2, and yet we haven't had a single new apartment there built in decades. Same with Makiki, same with many of these other areas.
That's
so
2 minutes.
we're working on that. Okay.
Thank you, Tyler. All right, Traci, your answer, please.
So I have been able to help constituents through the rent relief program, and that was through the ARPA funds, right? That's the American Rescue Plan Act, and through the City Department of Community Services. So I believe that is their function, to be able to help with the housing and human services sector. So I would continue to try to help through that department. I think the situation, especially when it pertains to seniors, are different, right? So looking at different options for that. So I'm not sure whether your question is more just broad or directed to seniors. So I just wanted to provide that broad answer.
Thank you, Traci. All right. Tyler, would you like to add anything?
In addition to what I'd like to work on in terms of our apartment zones and unlocking that, again, going back to sort of the TOD thing, I think there's a really good opportunity to utilize, that TOD zone. The city and state both need to work together on the underlying infrastructure in some of these areas so we can actually get housing built. And, with a lot of these financing programs, LIHTC, et cetera, we can really focus in on senior housing. I know there's the one coming up in Chinatown right now. We need to see more of those coming up and keep them affordable for the 30-year term, and make sure that the developers and owners, fulfill their commitments.
All right. Thank you, Tyler. Traci, is there anything you would like to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention with respect to those who are homeless, who aren't facing severe mental illness challenges. One of my suggestions is to provide comparable youth-based programs, such as the Youth Challenge, Weed and Seed program, just because there are similarities with respect to oftentimes those who are homeless may not want to listen to those in authority or be hindered by rules. Many of these programs know how to counsel and help to encourage and support those. And so I was encouraging that, as well as looking at talking with the American Civil Liberties Union, because oftentimes they oppose legislation passed by the council and supported by the mayor and his administration as to how we can help address the homeless issue.
Thank you very much. All right, our next director, Greg Misakian. Greg, are you there?
Aloha to both of you. I don't live in District 6, but I visit often to many of the communities there. My question is going to be related to Chinatown. So I've noticed that Chinatown has seen considerable deterioration since the start of the COVID pandemic, with many businesses closed and boarded up, graffiti seen everywhere, and an increase in crime and an increase of the homeless. Businesses that remain often close early due to safety concerns. And there are other concerns that, are shared by the community and seen in the news often. A recent Chinatown cleanup with almost 300 people participating was hosted by the Chinese Chamber of Commerce. This community organized cleanup event was a first step to improve the downtown area. If elected, what will you propose for the next steps to make Chinatown a destination that our local residents and our tourists want to visit?
All right, this will be taken by Traci first.
Yes, I live in downtown Honolulu, and I lived in downtown Honolulu also in the mid 90s. The difference, especially after the pandemic, has been overwhelming, and the amount of crime and the types of crimes that are being committed, especially in Chinatown, are unheard of. So I support. I was actually at that Chinatown cleanup, and I used to throughout the years participate in the Chinatown cleanups. But I would look to addressing, first of all, our police vacancies issues as with respect to addressing crime. And I mentioned that I lived in New York City, and there was a high police presence there. I was there in the late 90s, and I believe that with more police presence, that will help. We can provide our police with more tools that they need in order to effectively address crime. So, for example, a question that I'm often asked is by constituents in Chinatown, why doesn't that substation be able to help directly? It's more of an administrative function. So that's something that I will continue to ask and request on behalf of the constituents, because I believe that presence can be very effective and stronger. The core program has been, and the presence in Chinatown has been able to help address concerns relating to those who need the care, medical care and attention. So that's been helpful. But I would really look at also helping those who need to be in permanent housing. Those who need mental service support. And that's what I see on a daily basis. Obviously, so as I mentioned, the police, those who need medical care, and those who need
just hit 2
mental
minutes.
health
Thank you.
services. And with respect to the businesses, helping Chinatown to become what it used to be through Waikiki Trolley, for example.
Sorry, Traci.
Sorry.
I'm sorry, it's 2 minutes. All right, Tyler, you're next.
Yeah, I think, Traci mentioned the crime aspect. As we know, there are, 350 vacancies at HPD. But really, it's a question of, what our officers are doing. And she kind of touched upon that there, right? If all they're doing is sitting behind a desk, that doesn't do us a whole lot of good. So, we need to make sure that, they're out in the community in an appropriate way. We do have that network of CCTV cameras in Chinatown. Many of them for years haven't worked. And part of what makes me mad about Chinatown and some of our other communities is we look at, the attention that's given to Waikiki. The mayor just announced a Safe and Sound program in Waikiki, which is great. Don't get me wrong. But, we do need some level of investment in Chinatown and in some of the other communities where neighbors don't feel safe. And so, we need to work on, of course, the CCTV issue and getting, more police officers on the ground, but also, as Trace mentioned, the core program. This is something that's really important. Most of the calls to 911 that come from Chinatown aren't really for crimes per se. I mean, it's a lot of, homeless folks who are in need of different things, who need sort of acute medical care. But these are things that relate to sort of chronic issues that, they need to deal with. So having the core program, which is pairs of social workers, going out on a daily basis has really helped. In terms of, more of the violent crime that businesses have to deal with, it sort of is a chicken and the egg issue. We have a lot of sort of unseedy activity that goes in, and that deters normal, folks from being able to come in and do their shopping, meet with their friends, eat at the restaurants. And so we need to break through that. Obviously, I think the best way that we can do that is by supporting, the positive things that are happening in the community. A lot of events. We started off, really strong with First Friday several years ago. But, other activities. We're having a growing art district in Chinatown.
We're at 2 minutes.
Heritage in that area. We should be promoting that. And the more activity we have, the better.
Thank you very much, Tyler. Tracy, so sorry we had to cut you off,
Oh,
but
no,
you do have an additional minute now.
Sorry. Oh, yeah, sorry I was going on. But yes, as I mentioned, the Mayor's Office of Economic Revitalization. So they work with businesses such as Waikiki Trolley to seek to bring that business into that area. So I would look to expanding and doing more of that.
Thank you very much. All right, Tyler, we cut you off too, so you have a minute to add.
No, and I think that just to close things up, we have a great opportunity in Chinatown to bring people together, really activate the community, but it's going to take, leadership. This is not something that is going to happen overnight, but, the problems that occur in Chinatown aren't happening, didn't happen overnight as well. It's been years of sort of neglect or, focusing in other areas. So we need to bring the focus back in on Chinatown.
All right, thank you very much. All right, my colleague, Director Gary Simon has a question for both of you. And the first one to respond would be Tyler.
Thank you, Lila, Tracy, and Tyler. The lifespan of a council member can be rather short in terms of political beats, right? 8 years. So you have to hit the ground running. Some leaders point out that we have the lowest property taxes in the nation, but that ignores that our municipality, our property taxes don't fund primary and secondary schools. Furthermore, it ignores the high valuations of properties in here in Honolulu County. What would you like to see in terms of property tax reform? And actually, to be more precise, would you like to see a decrease for the primary homes of our citizens? And do you have a starting point to throw out there, just as a starting point that might get shot down? For example, increasing the exemption or decreasing the rate for, I believe, is it 0.45 or something like that? Please, Tyler.
Sure. So to start, increasing that exemption, I think makes a lot of sense. With the way that our property valuations have gone up, I think it makes sense for owner occupants. We want to make sure that people, especially seniors who have been in their properties or owner occupants for years and years and years, are able to stay there. We don't want to contribute, further to the homelessness or housing instability issues. That's the first one. I think the second one, overall, the valuation issue. This is something I hear about from neighbors all the time. It's of no fault of their own that, down the street there was a sale, or maybe in certain neighborhoods, the monster home pops up, and overnight, you have a $3 million house a few streets down from you, and that, contributes to the formula for how valuations are calculated. The Real Property Tax Commission has some ideas on how we can reform, the property tax valuation formula. I think that's really important. Big picture wise, there's two things that I'd also like to do. We need to look at, we have a residential A rate, which is for people who own multiple properties who aren't living in that property, basically investment properties. I think we should explore having a higher tier for very, very high value properties that aren't owner occupied. And then the other thing that I think we really need to work on, and we've talked about this for years, is around the TOD areas, having some sort of TOD tax district. So the new developments that come up in that area are paying their fair share, and we can dedicate that revenue to purposes that will fund vital city services. But we need to set up that structure. We've talked about it for years, and we just need to make it happen. I know there's issues with the bond availability, as well as some other rules, but let's not treat that as a obstacle. Let's figure out how to get that to happen.
Thank you very much, Tyler. Tracy, your turn, please.
Yes, I rely on subject matter experts, so including the City Department of Budget and Fiscal Services, the Oahu Real Property Tax Advisory Commission, which did recently release their report. I believe it was June 30th. So I look at their recommendations, and I know that the City Council is reviewing these recommendations as well. Personally, in this District 6 office, I worked with several constituents who are seniors, and they have issues with the low income tax credit. And so part of that was talking with this commission and helping to communicate their concerns. And so they did address especially that one, which does relate to the threshold of income, and with respect to making it more compatible or equivalent to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. So I don't want to say that because I'm not an expert, and that's why I rely on them. I don't want to say that I support or I'm going to do something that to me I don't have enough knowledge about, especially right now. And so I definitely support our local families and homeowners being able to live and in their houses and be able to pass that on to the generations, because I know that's very important. The monster house issue is one that's very prevalent in this district, and it does affect the property valuations. And so that's a part of addressing that this equation. So I think with respect to decreasing the primary homes, yeah. So I don't want to say specifically what my recommendations are for that until I know more.
All right, thank you, Traci.
Thank you.
All right, Tyler, you have another minute if you want.
No.
No? All right, thank you very much. Okay, the next question comes from me. There's been a lot about corruption in government in the news. We've been hearing about a lot of pay-to-play schemes. And so I'd like for both of you, independently, of course, to address pay-to-play and publicly funded elections. What are your thoughts? And we're going to start with Traci.
Obviously, against pay-to-play, anything that's against the law. We are, and having been a public servant for the city since January 2018, I believe that we have to remember on a daily basis what we're there for, who we're there for, and how we receive our salaries. With respect to, I guess, the public financing of elections, I do support that. I did look at that when I first decided to run. You may have read that I was a reluctant candidate because I thought, I don't want to ask for money. I don't want to, there's so many services that need money. And there are a lot of, those who are experiencing homelessness, houselessness, those who are having a hard time paying their rent. How can I, take people's money, to run for office? And then I really thought about, well, how are they going to know how to vote for me? And so just from a practical perspective of being able to pay for the postage, I had to look at that. But this public corruption, government corruption issue is very unfortunate. I look at, as I mentioned, being a government worker, and I had mentioned in different responses to questionnaires about more training, because we have training, and to me it kind of just reminds us what we're there for, but because we're at our desk. And to me, I think that's where it starts. Yes, okay, there could be grand schemes and people that are just really out there, or but I think generally every day when we're making those decisions, we're making those calls, we're sending and receiving emails, we have to be reminded about what we're there for. And that's why I do advocate for more training and real life examples, for our government employees and officials to help prevent that.
All right, thank you very much, Traci. Tyler, your response, please.
This is an area that I've been an advocate on for years, as through my group Hi Good Neighbor, which started off, pushing against the development of monster homes, and we worked with the news media and other folks in the community to expose some of the issues at DPP, which culminated last summer in those 5 inspectors being caught having taken tens of thousands of dollars in bribes. And this, was only 5 inspectors, and there are folks, in other departments who, of course, are suspected of doing similar things. And this is clearly unacceptable. We've worked to, expose them, and there's a few things that I want to do. And I think we need to work with the administration on. There's a lot of processes where, a human touch is required. And whenever there's a human touch, there's the opportunity for a bad actor, somebody, who doesn't have the public's interest in mind, to mold that system or to pervert it in some way. And so we have technology that we can utilize, whether it's in the planning and permitting department, whether it's some of the other sort of discretionary things the city offers, to streamline those services, make it very transparent, have a detailed computer record. I think that would really help. On the procurement side, this is an area where we see a lot of, unscrupulous contractors try to, manipulate the system via procurement. This is an area that we also need to really look at and make sure that, people aren't taking advantage of what should be a very fair, open, and transparent process. Finally, when it comes to public elections, I'm a supporter of the public, financing system. Of course, that's on the state side. The State Campaign Spending Commission, administers it. Again, so kind of going to the same question about our condominium associations, I think it would actually add a lot more complication if the city were to do it itself. I think in terms of making elections and voting as easy as possible, this is something the city can do. And I applaud the city clerk's office for putting out more drop boxes. I know a lot of the groups
We're at 2 minutes.
Have been doing that and pushing for it. So, I think we're on a good path there, but it's going to require some leadership to get there.
All right. So Traci, you have another minute to add.
Yeah, so again, this is the legislative role, and then we have our executive role. But so what I would advocate for, with respect to really looking at this, in the details, where is the incentive the greatest? For example, zoning decisions, building regulation, property tax assessments, contracts and procurements. Where there are similar. Smaller individual incentives, but more frequent opportunities. Those are building inspectors, traffic code enforcement, permit processing, where the incentives are increased because action is not prompt. For example, there are too few staff there, or too little supervision for efficient processing, ambiguous, regulations, and opportunities where opportunities are the greatest, decisions are made by one or very few people. So, and then when there is no effective supervision. So yes, there are many ways to look very, very, at the details of how to address this. And obviously I'm willing to work with the mayor and his administration to do so.
All right, thank you, Traci. Tyler, you have another minute.
No, I think I would just add, this is an area where I think we need, leadership, and leadership that's going to take action, not just wait for issues to arise, not just react after the fact, but as the DPP audit and some of the other departments, have come through, we need to act upon what those recommendations are to prevent issues in the future.
Thank you very much. All right, the next question.
Can I just add something to that? Sorry, would I be able to? Just really quick. Oh no, okay, that's all right. That's okay.
Thank you. You can add it at the summary. Thank you. All right. The next question comes from my colleague, Rick Tabor.
Okay, someone else has the timer now. Okay, so I actually live in Pauoa Valley. So, and my father-in-law actually served on the community association as president back in the 70s. And so I wrote a little bit of a question here. So we have two very dangerous roadways that need attention. You're well aware of them if you're in Pauoa Valley. One is by the bridge at the top of Booth Road. The other is after the church, right before Booth Park and Pauoa Elementary on Pauoa Road. And there actually was a death there. Pretty serious. And added danger is the lack of sidewalks. So we actually end up having to, when I walk my puppy, I actually have to walk in the road in those spots, and they come swerving around. Two cars come, you're a goner. My father-in-law tried to enact sidewalks as being installed, and got a lot of friction around all of that. I think today's different, and our Kupuna are very isolated as a result of that. My wife has actually tripped twice. She's a little bit klutzy, but they're very uneven what is there. She's actually broken her ankle, and she recently broke the ball of her humerus bone. So she's getting all crippled up here. There's no roads. So how would you improve our neighborhood pedestrian and road accessibility in a safe and affordable way? What my father-in-law ran into is the affordability issue. Who's first, Lila?
Tyler's first.
All right, Tyler.
Yeah. Well, this is something that, in the neighborhood I grew up in Alewa Heights and Liliha, same thing. I mean, a lot of our older neighborhoods the streets were never laid out with sidewalks. Ironically, some of these streets, you do have the setback because a long time ago, the city had plans to widen those streets. So Liliha Street is a good example where you've got this easement in front of your house. But, we don't have the sidewalks. There's also the issue of parked cars, on the unimproved sidewalks, which you're not supposed to do. But of course, all throughout the community, people do it. I think I would say a few things. One is, to the extent that we can put in a sidewalk with the consent of owners, absolutely. We can work on that. It's going to take a little bit of studying and engineering. There also is some federal funding around infrastructure that we can grab, safe routes to school, a number of other programs to do sidewalk improvements. I know in Kalihi and in that part of the district, we're utilizing that on Camphor Road and in some other areas like on Gulick to deal with it. Something else that is an issue in Pauoa Valley in particular is for seniors, getting to the bus stops, basically anywhere behind, Booth Park and Ahekolo Street. Beyond that, there's no real bus service. And so, people have to walk down that very narrow part of Booth Road or come down on Kikuanoni, and come around to simply get around. And so it is a little bit isolating. There probably are ways that we can hopefully try to get a better transportation for that sort of last mile problem. But yeah, it's going to come down to funding, but if we can grab funds, let's put it to work and make that happen.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Tracy, you're next.
Yes, so we do need to look at federal funds usually would be helpful for us. There are different, factors that play into this. I definitely agree because District 6 has a lot of older neighborhoods and a lot of seniors. I know that they have a difficult time, being able to just go out for a walk, especially if they have a walker or they're on some kind of mobile device. But it's not that easy to be able to just improve these unimproved sidewalks because there are factors such as cost, as improving the standards of the city, right, up to city standards. So we're looking at drainage and sewer. There is of course the ADA compliance. There's certain requirements for that. There's a city's complete streets program, and so that could be a part of this. But I know that they have concerns about bringing our areas up to that standard, because the other part too with the unimproved sidewalks is, yes, it's illegal to park there, but many people do. So when they lose that, they won't have street parking, or so to speak, right? And so there are many factors that people don't know fully, and so part of what I would do is help to educate the constituents as to these are the pros and cons. This is what would happen. These are the specific costs. Are you willing to contribute to those costs directly or indirectly? Because this is what it would take. And then there's of course this city and state's Vision Zero policy. That's part of that. And then I wanted to also mention, though, that the state of Hawaii, the Department of Transportation, they are looking to create kupuna zones and keiki zones, and that's to help reduce speeds in areas. So kind of looking at, as part of the age-friendly program, the city's ordinance that I mentioned, how we can help seniors especially be able to live a quality life in these areas that have older infrastructure.
All right, thank you. Tyler, a minute for you.
Yeah, and I think just to add on, there are some interventions that we can do that aren't hugely costly. Obviously, a whole sidewalk is very costly, but it could be as simple as striping, well-defined edge of the road to keep drivers in the middle, away from, the side. A simple line of paint on the ground is sometimes all that's needed, and it's a lot cheaper than a strip of concrete. Same with signage. Right above you, actually, Rick, at Ahekolo Booth, that sort of complicated intersection, it's missing the word stop in front of the stop bars. And one of the street signs was missing, stop signs was missing too. I mean, these are things that are very easy to do that will hopefully improve pedestrian safety a little bit while we work on the bigger picture issues. And I'm really a believer the city's got to deal with these little things too, because if we can't deal with the little things, there's no way we're going to deal with the big things either.
Thank you. All right, Tracy, a minute for you to add if you want.
And I just want to mention parks. Obviously there are ways to help expand those services of the parks and the facilities so that seniors can do more of the exercise there. And then the other issue too related to that would be how to get seniors to those parks. So again, looking at possibly if we do have the micro transit services as part of the city, then we can help to get them there.
Thank you very much. All right, my colleague, Dale Head, Director Dale Head has a second question. Dale, are you there?
Oh, yes, thank you. Hey, back slightly to this matter of corruption. All right. One way to deal with that would be through transparency. Other than having enforceable ethics on elected officials, one tool to deal with it would be bringing into public view donors list. So they dig for them. Would you be willing to introduce a bill for inclusion of a hyperlink on city council members' page to show their donors list, including the amount given? Thank you.
And this goes to Traci first.
Definitely. I would definitely be willing to do that. Of course, a campaign spending commission is under the state as well as the elections office, but I would be willing to do that.
All right, thank you. Traci, is your answer complete then for now? Okay. All right, Tyler, you have 2 minutes.
Yes, that's it. Nice and easy.
Okay, all right, nice and easy. Anything to add? No? Okay, the next question comes from, you've already seen it before, Director Doug Matsuoka.
Hi, wow, those were real quick and unambiguous answers to that last one. I get to ask another question, and I hate to seem obsessed with housing affordability, but boy, you spend one night out on the sidewalk and it kind of sticks with you. I still use a sleeping bag as my covers on my bed. I'm ready, Anyway, in Hawaii, a landlord can double or more a senior's rent and then give them 45 days to comply. In fact, not too long ago, that was the case with a large section in Kailua, where you had people paying $950, and then it went up to $1975. We got 45 days to comply or get out, or you can simply evict a long-term renter without any reason, or at will. And aside from building affordable housing, and I get the logic of building affordable housing, but aside from that, are you willing to consider any of the following 3 measures to protect renters? One is limiting the percent rent can be raised. For instance, in Oregon, the new state law is that you can only raise it 7% plus the inflation rate. And then number 2, requiring longer notice, especially for large increases in rent. If your rent doubles and you got 45 days, you're not going to do it, man. It's impossible to do. And also number 3, requiring cause for eviction. A lot of places you have to show cause, and these measures can be applied Honolulu-wide, or like in the sit and lie laws, be limited to certain areas. Anyway, are you willing to consider any of those measures or additional ones for the protection of renters?
And the question goes to Tyler first.
Yeah, I think I'm willing to look at all of these things. In particular, I think showing cause is important. But of course, the flip side to that is, the landlord can gin up any reason, under the sun. So that's, there is sort of that balance, of course, in recognizing it. But, having some reason is better than no reason whatsoever. And oftentimes the reason that somebody comes up with is really not the actual underlying reason. But, I think to your point, having a stronger relationship from the tenant side with the landlord, having more rights is certainly better. And that's, I think, something really good that has happened recently is there is a movement towards having some more tenant rights organizations popping up. I really think that this is a positive development for our community, which has been lacking this for a long time. And so I think there is this recognition that things are unfair to renters, and the balance of power is not on their side. So I'm willing to look into what these things are, but of course recognizing that it's not necessarily a complete fix to the underlying issues.
Thank you. All right, Tracy, you're next.
This is actually the jurisdiction of the state under the landlord tenant code. So I would be willing to help encourage ways to address your concerns. I wanted to mention about the rent utility relief program that I mentioned that I help several of the District 6 residents with. So that's with respect to being able to pay back rent. So if they can't afford to pay and they're facing eviction, I was able to help some constituents be able to stay in their rental units longer, through that program. And then there's that mediation component, again, more under the state, but that's part of that. So there are different ways that the city can help to address, those kinds of concerns. If we can't address it directly within the city legislation, then we of course can help to encourage, but we can maybe through the City Department of Community Services help the renters to be able to stay there for as long as possible and within reasonable means if we can.
Thank you, Tracy. Tyler, is there anything you want to add?
No, I think, Tracy does bring up a good point that a lot of this is under the landlord tenant code on the state side, but there are conditions that you can put on city funding, under Bill 50 and 59, you had to create a certain number of affordable units. And those, of course, are under unilateral agreement with the city. I mean, these are things that we can actually regulate that way. Of course, the state's, code would supersede it if there were stronger language. But I think this is something that we can find a way to do. But of course, it's a matter of balancing, things, and we don't want to create another set of problems that are kind of unforeseen further down the line.
Thank you. All right, Tracy, would you like to add anything?
Yep.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, the next question comes from Director Greg Misakian again. Greg?
Thank you for an opportunity to ask a second question. My second question is regarding the safety and well-being of our residents, not just in your district, but throughout Hawaii. So recently I read that the Honolulu Fire Department had reported poor results for fire and life safety evaluations being conducted in buildings throughout District 6. HFD's 3-month August update reported that of the 275 fire and life safety evaluations submitted by licensed professionals, only 20 properties have received an acceptable level of fire safety from HFD. What would you do and how would you address this if you were on City Council?
The question goes to Tracy first.
So what Councilmember Fukunaga has been trying to do, as I mentioned, she is the current chair of the Public Infrastructure and Technology Committee. So talking with the different subject matter experts and community leaders, they want more time to be able to be in compliance with the ordinance. There are cost issues that I mentioned earlier, especially with respect to seniors and being able to afford getting their properties up to that standard. It's very unfortunate that hopefully though we can look at different ways. So I understand that there are maybe some funding alternatives. Right now, that's not something that is being I guess realistic. But I think the state and city partnerships, maybe we can seek to do that, and maybe even federal. I think that more time, and I think we need to look at how we can help the condo associations meet those compliance standards. So not just saying, here are all the standards, this is what you do, or no, this is what you need to do, but don't help them to know how to do it. So I think that's where we as the city can help them more.
Thank you. All right, Tyler, you're next.
I think at the end of the day, getting the projects into compliance is going to take a lot longer than what's allowed. under the ordinance. So that's just the reality of the situation. And we are probably gonna have to extend the deadline to get people into compliance. But, it's not just fire sprinklers, there's other interventions and other improvements that can be made to get them, more points, to get them into a category where, we feel that these buildings are safer for their tenants. It does come down to cost, and, that's a really tough thing. I think that the city does play a role in helping, but, we can't simply pay for every building to be, improved to the top-notch standard. I mean, that's also the reality of where we're at here. We were just talking about property taxes, right? We live in sort of the world that we live in. But, moving forward, it's been over 5 years since Marco Polo fire. We've had these rules, they've been worked on for basically that amount of time, and they're not, fully perfect, but in the next few years, hopefully we can get a path forward and get at least some small improvements made to get, more points so that they do fall into some degree of compliance.
All right. Thank you very much. Tracy, anything to add?
No.
Thank you. All right. Tyler, anything you want to add? No? Okay, very good. And then the next question comes from my colleague, Director and Vice President Rick Tabor. Rick, are you there?
I'm here. All right. Well, thank you for an opportunity to ask another question. I actually have 2 questions, but I'll do which one? We've touched on this a little bit. Personally, our neighborhood has seen more than their share of crime. So my wife had her catalytic converter ripped off. A neighbor had hers ripped off. We've had break-ins during broad daylight. Well, somebody's doing yard work in the backyard. You've heard about all of these kinds of things. So when elected, this will likely be one of your top District 6 issues. What's the plan?
The question goes to Tyler first.
Okay, Tyler.
Sure. Top 3 things. We need to deal with the vacancies at HPD. Again, 350 officer vacancies. We need to focus on recruitment and retention of officers, and get them out into the community more, which gets to sort of the second point, which is supporting our community watch neighborhood security patrol program. I've been pleased to have been able to join several of the neighborhood watch walks throughout the community in all different districts, part of the districts, and we need to support those. The final thing, and very few people I think are talking about this, is the role that the prosecutor's office plays in this. A lot of the folks who are doing this, the catalytic converter thefts, the break-ins, this is a repeat issue, and we've struggled to deal with sort of the repeat offender question. And so the prosecutor's office, I think, has a role in this. Also, the clearance rate of cases has gone down from the time that somebody is caught to the time that they have a hearing, and the time that the entire sort of arc of this process is closed. It does take a very, very long time. If we can shorten that and get criminals taken to justice, so to speak, all the way through that process, the quicker the better, so they're not back out on the street as repeat offenders per se. The final thing that I think is really important in dealing with this, and this isn't just on the crime and catalytic convert thefts, but crime is sort of taken on a different dimension as well. And so it's not just the break-ins, it's not just the thefts, but we see illegal game rooms in our communities, in Chinatown, a lot of violent crime. We need to make sure that HPD is well equipped to deal with all of these issues, not just with the staffing, but other tools as well on the enforcement side.
Thank you. All right, Tracy.
Yes. Yes, helping to address the HPD vacancies issue. The other part, being a staff member in this district office. So many times when I receive, when I'm assigned these issues, for example, homeowners saying the same thing, daylight, people are taking things just from my truck that's parked in my garage. So I usually connect them with the community policing team, and they make recommendations as to what they can do. And then many times it helps if they have surveillance footage, right? And so there was if you probably read that Civil Beat article I mentioned that then there was a mention that something did happen to me. I was shopping for 2 hours, I believe, not more than 2 hours at the Alewa shopping center. And in daylight, someone did a smash and grab with my vehicle. I got back and I was trying to open my door and I realized, oh, there's my window is smashed. But HPD, the officer who reported to the scene, said that the surveillance camera was not going to be able to capture that. I usually park in another part of the mall where there is a camera, but there was some kind of construction. So I would really encourage that, just for because HPD and the prosecuting attorney's office, they do need that kind of evidence to do something. And then working as a community, I noticed the neighborhood security watches are very strong. Nuuanu, for example, they really look out for each other. And so if they say, okay, I have some kind of footage here, or even someone from Liliha just told me yesterday that his neighbor had some kind of footage. He never met him before, but he came to his door and said, hey, you know what, I saw what was happening, and here you can have the footage. So I think those three elements will help our communities.
Thank you very much. All right, Tyler, you have a minute if you want to add something.
I think we covered this pretty well.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, and then the next question, let's see, that was Rick. So I believe, Greg, you have a question. Are you there, Greg?
Yes.
Thank you.
So this question is a little bit more general, not specific to one of the issues per se, but it's just in regards to how you would address overall issues. So candidates often present their top issues during the campaign and say they'll focus on them. Voters make decisions based on what they believe and hope will be the issues they care most about. There are always particular issues or causes that some candidates are personally focused on, but that are not priorities or shared by their constituents. If elected, will you promise to focus on the key issues that you campaigned on and that your constituents care most about?
And the question first goes to Traci.
The reason that I selected as my top three priorities, crime, housing, so that would be homelessness, houselessness, affordable housing, large-scale single-family dwellings, that's monster houses, and transportation, so that's traffic safety, including pedestrian and road conditions, is because on a daily basis, the office receives complaints about these issues. So that's consistent with what our office receives. Now, of course, there are those who never contact their legislative representatives, right? So you have to factor that in. But for those that do, those are the issues that we see. I also, talk through with regardless if it's a neighborhood board or going out into the community, and I see that those issues are the recurring ones, and it's pretty consistent. So I would continue to work on that. But obviously, if there are other priorities and they change because of whatever happens, for different circumstances, different reasons, then obviously I would look at that as well.
Thank you very much. All right, Tyler.
Yeah, so I opened this up by saying that crime, homelessness, and affordable housing are my top issues. Everyone in the district got one of these in the mail. You'll probably get a few more before the general election, but crime, homelessness, affordable housing, and an action plan of things that you can count on me to work on in regard to this. Because you're right. I mean, it's easy to say things. You obviously need to work with your colleagues here, but our district, I think, as I go door to door, I hear that people are hungry for a leader who's going to take action. They want things to get done. And as I mentioned before, we need to deal with both issues, large and small, in the community. And so, if you go to my website, votetyler.com, we've got some specific things that I'm going to work on. And so hopefully we can make some difference in the next 4 years.
Thank you very much. All right, Traci, is there anything you'd like to add?
Oh, no, I could show my piece, but it's okay. It's all right. Thank you. But they can visit my website as well. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Okay, then Rick, your question, please.
Okay, I could come up with many questions, by the way, but I'm going to start with just thanking both of you for joining us today. I know Lila is going to do that, but I want to thank you also being from this district. I really appreciate. You've knocked on my door, so we've talked, but it's great to see you here sharing with the public here. So I appreciate that. Sorry if I stole your thunder, Lila. My last question. So this comes up frequently. So all of my questions actually come from the whole neighborhood. I walk my puppy every morning and every evening. And so the one probably most irritating thing here in Pauoa Valley is illegal fireworks. And irritating because it messes up our furry friends. We have a puppy, startles her. The whole neighborhood of dogs gets really rattled from this. I'm a veteran though. And who it really concerns me about is the veterans that have post-traumatic stress. I mean, and I was mental health, so I worked with post-traumatic stress. And these aren't your average pop, pop, pop fireworks. If you're in the neighborhood, these are bombs that are going off. The last one that went off was at 11 o'clock at night. It shook everybody's house, knocked things off the shelf. It's not right. So my question is, when I call HPD, and I have, and they come out here, the standard response I get is, what do you want me to do about it? There's only two of us. We can't do anything about it. Boom, firework going off over at Booth Park. Well, get over there so you can see what's going on. You know, there's only two of us. We don't have time for this. And they drive off. What can we do about this chronic issue? It's gone on for as long as I've been in Hawaii, it's 1976, but it's currently at kind of a huge irritant level for all of us here in the Valley. Thank you.
And the question goes to Tyler first.
So Rick, you are not alone in worrying about this, not just in Pauoa, but all throughout the district. Yesterday, I was knocking doors in Papakolea. This is probably the #3 issue up there. All throughout the district, I would say this is probably the fourth or probably fifth most common issue that I hear about from neighbors. And so obviously part of the issue is the enforcement, and this is going to take some work on the state side. You know, right now, the police basically need to watch you light the fuse. And of course, nobody's stupid enough to sit in their garage or driveway and do it in front of a cop. I think that we need to change the way that we deal with this and maybe treat it a little bit more like drugs. So follow me with this analogy here, but you know, you don't need to watch somebody, you know, light a joint to cite them, right? It's paraphernalia, it's possession, it's sort of a preponderance of evidence thing. And I think that that's something that we can work with our state partners to do legislatively. I think on the enforcement side as well, there are some tools. I did a recent tour of Oceanit, which is a business downtown. They do some cool technology stuff. They have these audio sensors that pick up very, very loud popping noises, and sort of if you have 3 or more of them, you can triangulate kind of where a noise comes from. Maybe with that, we can get some more evidence of exactly, you know, where this is happening and do a little bit more education of residents on that street, not to point fingers, but, you know, to really show that we know where it's coming from. Hopefully that stems the tide. Of course, our state harbors, guys, it's coming in somehow. That's another thing. But from the city's perspective, you know, pushing our state partners to and working with them to change the law, as well as to provide a few more tools on the enforcement level, I think would help.
Thank you. All right. Tracy, your turn, please.
Yes, so I did help to work on this issue, and because it's really falls in more of the state jurisdiction with respect to the laws, that's where we were really having to try to just pass on the issues. But yes, the issue of the evidence, you know, the HPD needs to be able to observe and be able to, you know, back up their citations in court, right? And then you have the prosecuting attorney's side as well. So, and then we don't want it to become neighbors telling on neighbors, which is oftentimes, or, you know, needing to now kind of, you know, record evidence, because I was going to say surveillance footage, but oftentimes they're at night, right? So it's harder to capture. But what I did notice is that people do have an idea of who it is, and whether they have the courage to say and report them, you know, that's something else, right? So, and that's a recurring theme throughout reporting any kind of crime throughout neighborhoods, right? Because, and that's the issue that HPD faces. They're willing to, if they're willing to prosecute and be witnesses, then the police have more of the ability to take action. But if the neighbors don't want to do that for obvious reasons, you know, so this is kind of the quandary. So looking at that, looking at, yes, the use of technology and being able to sense these kinds of fireworks and the source and where it's coming from, and of course looking at the source of you know, how it's getting to Hawaii. But again, it's a state issue that I would be willing to continue to work with our state legislators. I know that they're very concerned as well, and obviously for our veterans and our pets. We need to look more closely at this and be more proactive in seeking to address this, because it comes and goes. And then, but we do need to stay on it.
Thank you, Tracy. All right, Tyler, would you like to add anything?
I think the other thing that I would just add that makes this additionally more complicated, and maybe this is happening in your area, but neighbors in Kamehameha Heights have mentioned that sometimes it's folks even in a truck and they find sort of an empty spot and light it up on the side of the road, and then they have their little moment and then they leave, and of course all the neighbors have to suffer. But it's really hard to track these guys down. So that's another just difficulty of dealing with this. But to the extent that we can push on this, we absolutely will. It's a huge issue.
Thank you. All right, Tracy, do you want to add anything?
No.
Thank you very much. All right, Greg, you have one more question. Are you there?
Yes, I'm actually going to change the question, but it's going to be related to crime, because we've discussed crime, and the way I pose the question is going to be repetitive. So my question to both of you is, did you oppose or support House Bill 1567, which Governor Ige vetoed, which was for cash bail reform? So I would like to know from each of you, did you support that bill that eventually passed through the legislators, got to Ige's desk, and he vetoed it, or did you oppose it? And what's your position on it?
All right, the question goes to Tracy first.
You're on mute. So you have to unmute your
Okay,
mic.
all right.
Thank you.
This is a state bill, but no, I mean, I oppose this bill, but yeah, we didn't, it didn't come through the city council, but I don't support this.
And I've heard from neighbors about this. I mean, when this was in the news back in June, I mean, tons of people at the door, talked to me about this. I think it's very clear, the community opposed it. I'm personally, I understand that our bail system is unfair in a lot of ways, especially to the very poor. So I get that. But, listening to the community, I think that it's very clear that because of concerns about crime, because of just the way that constituents see crime in the community, they're very much opposed. And so I think that one thing I touched upon this earlier was sort of the clearance rate and the rate at which, how quickly we can have hearings through the judicial system. In what ways can we improve the system, both for, the community at large, as well as the way that we treat, suspects and those, who are within, the system in different ways. And so, providing the prosecutor's office with the tools to, get those prosecutions done in a timely way. Of course, working with our state partners as well is really important. As for the, the fundamental question here about that bill was, do we do away with this entirely, or do we, have judges give some discretion? I think that this, obviously I think there's a role for judges to have some discretion here, but it is a systemic issue community-wide. Sorry if it sounded a little squishy, but it's a complicated, topic for sure.
Thank you. Tracy, is there anything you'd like to add?
Nope.
All right, thank you very much. All right, and then I have a question. I've been reading about the red light cameras, and I'd like to know what your position is on the red light cameras. Tyler, you're first.
Yeah, I support this program. I think that our, traffic issues, pedestrian safety is really important. And a lot of intersections get blocked. I mean, all throughout the community during rush hour, this is an issue, and it blocks up traffic elsewhere. We want, of course, to encourage drivers to pay attention, to follow the rules. And we've talked throughout this conversation about giving our law enforcement partners some more tools in the toolbox. This is certainly one.
Thank you very much. Tracy, your response, please.
Generally, I support it. However, I would like to see some kind of evaluation at a certain point or different points in time, because from my understanding, this is citing the owners of the vehicles rather than the drivers. So I would like to see data about that.
Thank you. Tyler, anything that you'd like to add?
Yeah, I would add two things. I think one, of course, we cite the owner, not the driver, but that's the case for a lot of things. You get a parking ticket, and at the end of the day, it's the owner's responsibility to pay for it, even if it's somebody else driving it and parking it at an expired meter. I think the other thing, though, with these cameras, and we talked earlier about the CCTV cameras in Chinatown, this program is going to do us no good the moment that the camera gets vandalized in some way by some frustrated driver. And so with this program, if it's going to be successful, we're going to need maintenance. And this goes back to maintain those cameras in Chinatown. Those need to be maintained too.
All right. Thank you very much. Tracy, anything you want to add?
Well, just generally, and I know the city does this, and I'm sure the state does as well. There are privacy issues. There are issues relating to data. Footage being doctored. There are many factors. So there just needs to be making sure that certain protocols are in place to ensure that the information is accurate.
Thank you very much. All right, we have time for one more question. Rick, do you have a question?
What could I ask? Sure. So I'm going to stem off of this, the camera thing. So in Seattle, we had huge issues with the cameras. So I lived there for 31 years. And when the cameras first started, people were getting tickets that weren't running red lights. And the company that was running it was a for-profit, and it became a huge, huge issue. So Tracy, I agree, not just evaluating, but making sure that doesn't happen. So quick story, I got a ticket. I don't even remember being at the light. I went to court to contest it. They showed it up on a big screen. And the rule was that it's not the owner that gets the ticket there in Seattle, it was the driver. And you notice my hair. So the person driving more had your hair, Tracy. It was my wife but she did stop, and then she went through. Not only did she stop and went through, it was on an intersection where everybody was turning, and so you couldn't cut anybody off. She was in the right lane, and cars were making a left, and so she was cleared to go. So I got freed, but I put it up on the big screen, and I noticed it was Susan that was driving, not me. And they asked if I wanted to see it again. I said, no, that's okay, because I was afraid that Susan was going to have to go in. So the cameras are not foolproof. There were a lot of people getting ticketed, and most people don't have time to go into court. And so I would ask, and I know it's a state level, but would you support having some rules around making sure people's rights are held firm so that they don't end up paying tickets that they don't owe?
All right, Tracy's first.
Yes, definitely. And because I remember when I lived in Los Angeles, there were several issues similar to that. But I mean, maybe I'll ask you offline. But how did they find out that it was her? I mean, so how did they? Because I mean, just by the visual, I don't know how they track.
They didn't. So they had this giant screen in the courtroom. So many people in there. There was a very high definition screen. The judge wasn't looking at the screen, but I was. And I quickly saw that it was my wife driving, not me. Which would have meant that I got off, they let me go. But they could have made Susan come in. We would have had to waste more time on this ticket.
Right.
Not waived it. Yeah.
Right, but you're saying that the enforcement is actually of the driver, right? And how would they determine that? Sorry to take this time.
I am not sure how they would, but they would clearly saw it wasn't me. Yeah. Right. So because I didn't actually go there, but I did hear other people that had to go back in with the person that was driving the car. Right. So I don't know. I don't know how they would do it. And it would have been me held responsible in the end anyway, probably. But more my point was not so much that. Yeah. She was making a legal turn and got cited. And so in Seattle, I'm sure you could easily Google and get the articles on it. There were a lot of false tickets given out that people were held accountable for.
Exactly.
And that's the issue with these. I'm all for the lights. It's just, how do you do it in a way that's fair? Because again, it was a for-profit company that was overseeing it, and they were getting a percentage. And so there's that end of it too. Right.
And just the bureaucratic workload of being able to look at that, to determine whether it's accurate and the evaluation and thus, and then do they remove the tickets and once they've already issued them? And so yes, I would just kind of
because they make you go into court to fight it, is what it is.
Okay,
which
yeah,
costs you about what the ticket would have cost anyway.
exactly.
The reason you do it though is because it's a moving violation. It's going to count against your insurance.
Mhm.
So people do end up having to take that time. So it's a real inconvenience if you didn't break the law.
Right, right, yes. So I would encourage that, and maybe just looking at it as a pilot project just to collect data, but not necessarily start to actually collect the fines and let it go on people's records.
Thank you. All right, Tyler, your response to.
Yeah, no, I think just let's talk about this philosophically, a few things. So, you know, the for-profit company administering this, you know, I'm generally opposed to privatization of public services unless it's a very, very specific purpose and for a limited duration of time. And so, you know, that's certainly one. We talked a little bit earlier about, you know, clogging up the court system and in this case, declogging it. So, you know, you're right. We need clear rules sort of around this. In terms of enforcement in general, I mean, this is something that the city has struggled with, and we've not always reached the right balance on things. So I'll be the first to acknowledge that. I've been involved with dealing with the illegal vacation rental and short-term vacation rental issue. That's another one where it's very difficult to enforce, and it is unclear. It is messy, and these things sometimes are. You know, is it your cousin staying there, or is it just a random tourist you're, you know, selling to? Or what if the tourist says, oh, they're related or a friend? You know, it's not perfect, but we need to, you know, come up with rules. We need to, you know, apply them fairly across the board. And, you know, if we're going to set a rule like, you know, don't block an intersection, you know, for public safety, or, you know, don't clog up our neighborhoods with tourists and price out, you know, locals. You know, we need to have ways of being able to enforce that. And so, you know, it's not always perfect, but, you know, let's come up with rules with public input, with input from the departments to make sure that whatever it is that they're trying to do, they're actually able to do.
Thank you. Tracy, is there anything that you would like to add?
No.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, so it's nearly 1 o'clock. It is time for us to wrap up. Tyler, would you like to begin with your closing statement? You have up to 2 minutes.
Sure. Well, I want to thank you all for putting this together. I know the Kokua Council has done really excellent work with the Elderly Affairs Division on the city side, advocating for our seniors, as well as, you know, our vulnerable populations in general across this island. You know, our city needs leaders who are going to help tackle tough issues, longstanding issues throughout the community. We've talked at length about a lot of them, you know, crime, homelessness, cost of housing, you know, cost of rent. But, you know, our city leaders, in addition to dealing with those big picture things, also have to deal with the everyday nuts and bolts issues on the city level. I'll tell you this, if elected to the council, we're going to be focusing on these big picture issues. We're going to take a fresh look at a lot of these things and hopefully get some action. But I'm going to be putting together a good staff as well that's going to help with every little nuts and bolts issue in the community. So if elected, you can count on me, and I ask for your support.
Thank you very much. All right, Tracy, your turn, please.
Thank you so much again to the Kokua Council for hosting this and for your excellent questions. I believe that my strength is obviously working in this District 6 office and having been encouraged by the constituents themselves to run for the seat. The issues that I help to resolve on those which I'm assigned are long-standing complex issues. They're not simply putting up a sign, and sometimes that does take follow-up because of the city vacancies issue. But it's really having to work with the stakeholders, the community leaders, the constituents, obviously themselves, the departments, you know, within the city, the state and federal as needed. And I believe that being a paralegal is a strength because I'm able to work closely with the council attorneys, the city corporation council attorneys, and looking at the legislation and you know, seeing, okay, these are the laws, these are the loopholes, how can we address them, looking at the administrative rules, and then working together. You know, I know that the questions and the concerns are about crime and corruption and housing and homelessness. You know, when I lived in New York City, I went from a Broadway tour to living, and this was my choice, living as a starving artist, where I didn't know whether, you know, to $1 was going to go to some milk or to some bread, you know, and so I definitely understand what it's like to live like that, and so I have a lot of compassion for those who are on the brink of homelessness or who have experienced homelessness, and knowing that daily in the office, daily as council member for this district, I would continue to advocate for those needs and those concerns, especially because the city has the jurisdiction of issues that are so close to us as individuals, as citizens of this county, of this city. And as the day goes by and their trash is not picked up, or the sewage is not addressed, those issues, if they're facing homelessness, these are the reasons why I wake up in the morning, and it motivates me to send these riser requests at 4 o'clock in the morning, or do site visits on my paid holidays or whatever, because that's what I enjoy doing, and I would love to continue to be able to do so. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Tyler, Traci, it was a pleasure to have you. Thank you so much for participating in Kokua Council's debate. It was enlightening. I have to let you know that your district houses my dear former in-laws. And when Tyler mentioned Leslie is a former cousin. So give her a hug and kiss from me. Thank you. Thank you very much for joining us. I'm going to stop now and invite you to next week's council members debate. I think it was District 12. I might be wrong on that. But anyway, please join us again. Thank you. Mahalo. Stay well.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.